Hello, everybody. Fight Club Hubs here. Today, we're going to be doing a little news blurb of what recently happened, and we're going to be having a nice little discussion. Art or offensive? Where do you draw the line when it comes to video games? Right now on GVN Live.
I know my future is, but it'll never be your best. You can distance in your world, you'll never ever change the past. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I am Fight Club Hubs, and welcome to another wonderful episode of GVN Live. I am joined by Jan and Mark. How are you two doing tonight? Let's start with Jan.
I'm sleepy.
You're sleepy.
Packing sucks.
Yeah, you're moving farther out west, aren't you?
I'm heading closer to home, so it's better than
Closer to home. I guess you're originally from like the West Coast or mountain area.
Mm-hmm. I'm originally from Colorado, so
Oh, hey, cool. Go Broncos. No, okay.
yes. No, I'm a huge Colorado sports fan, so we're not talking about that right now because I'm still very salty and very disappointed in my Avalanche. But that's beside.
And Mark, how are you tonight, sir?
I mean, I'm fine. We did a birthday board game bash over the weekend where we played a bunch of board games, and it was quite enjoyable, and I had a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
got to see and talk to a bunch of people. So that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. There was that one game I tuned in to watch. I forget what it was called, but it looked very interesting. What was it called again?
I don't know which one
It
you
was
tuned
the
in.
one that I compared, saying it looks like a combination between MTG and Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh, Marvel Legendary, yes.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, we did Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu, which is, Pandemic, but with Cthulhu stuff. If you don't know what Pandemic is, I can't help you. It's a game where you're trying to stop infections from taking over in like the world and killing everybody. So this time it's you're trying to stop Cthulhu from being summoned and killing everybody. We also played Zombicide, which is a game where you just murder a shitload of zombies and attempt to accomplish other tasks. And Legendary Marvel Comics, which is basically just a deck building game where you draft good guys onto your team to fight the bad guys.
Okay. Just a simple game, I guess, right?
Yeah, they're all pretty simple. Like, none of them are incredibly complex. I would say that you would, for all intents and purposes, probably be able to get into them with a minimal amount of understanding, I would think.
Okay, so it's not like Exploding Kittens or anything like that, huh?
Exploding Kittens wasn't particularly complicated, I didn't think either.
Mm-mm.
They're probably a little bit more complicated than Exploding Kittens, but
Okay.
less complicated than like Kingdom Death, as an example.
Not familiar with Kingdom Death, but I'm sure when I come over for a board game night, I'll probably experience it.
No, we've been keeping that to like a set small group of people because it's as complicated as it is. We've done a couple of live streams, so I mean, if you haven't seen them, thanks for admitting that you don't come to my live streams, you fucking dick.
There have been a few nights where I actually work till 10 o'clock, or I work till 9 o'clock, and I don't get home till after 10. So, hey, if I miss it, I went to bed. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
Sorry,
whatever.
not sorry.
It's fine. I'll kill you later.
Lel.
Yeah, only in your dreams, buddy. Sorry.
I mean, listen, I know where you live. It's certainly within the realm of feasibility. I'm just lazy.
And I know where you live, too. I'm just too tired when I get there.
Basically.
Yeah, so we'll never kill each other. It's a standoff.
That's probably for the best for now.
Yeah. Okay, so first off, we're gonna just we're gonna do a little bit of a look back at the past couple of weeks since our last show. A lot of interesting things have happened, so we're just gonna pick and choose a couple of things, and then we're gonna move on to our main discussion of the night, which is an idea that just popped into my head randomly, and I'm like, okay, so where do you draw the line between a video game being considered art and when do you just call it offensive? And we will get more into that later in the show. But to start things off, let's take a look at some of the big things that have happened recently. Mark, there was something you posted in the Discord channel. Would you like to talk about that? The issue surrounding the company behind
Quantic Dream, yes.
Quantic Dreams, yes.
So, we are coming closer and closer to the release of Detroit being human, or becoming human, or whatever the fucking hell that damn subtitle is.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking becoming bullshit. And there has been a not small amount of controversy surrounding that game in specific, and Quantum Dream in general, Quantic Dream, whatever. Inclusive of, but not limited to, some issues with David Cage just opening his mouth and saying dumb things. The company having various different issues as it relates to how they present the characters and what sort of social movements they're riffing off of. But recently they got into a situation where it started off bad and then just became so much worse. So articles were written for a French magazine, French newspaper, Le Monde, as well as a website, Mediapart, where they were essentially talking about having horrible work conditions in Quantic Dream. Like that their website is just, their company, is just the worst. It's just terrible to work in. The environment is sexist. It's homophobic. People behave incredibly inappropriately. Like, not even the sort of stuff that you expect from like an EA type environment where there's 80 hours of work and you're salaried, so you're getting like no money and you're just like driving yourself to work to death. Mm-hmm. No, this is good old fashioned shitty behavior. And that's bad. That is a bad situation to be in general. So Quantic Dream is suing both of those establishments for the negative reporting that was done. They're not necessarily indicating, it's not libel, as near as I can tell. They haven't even necessarily been talking about it. Jason Schreier talked about it on Kotaku, and he said he found out about it in kind of a roundabout way, like it wasn't a thing that was announced or anything. Cage just basically said during a press event, "Yeah, we're suing the journalist." Like, who fucking does that? It was just like, yeah, they said some mean shit about us, so we're suing them. Who says that? Just lets that out. And the thing is like, somebody asked about the articles at the PR event, and like the Sony press person tried to stop the question from happening, and then Cage, because Cage can't shut the fuck up ever about anything, said, "Yeah, we're suing them." They didn't give any indication as to what's happening necessarily. They haven't indicated that it's libel or anything like that. They're just suing them, and sending them threatening letters and so on and so forth. It's very stupid, and I have a lot of problems with this in general, not the least of which being fuck Quantic Dream, fuck David Cage.
It's a mess, I can tell you right now. It's not. I don't even hear of people outside the gaming industry even suing the news outlets there often for just bad reporting and all that crap. It's just ludicrous that Cage is got his head so far up his ass.
Yeah, well, it's not even just him. It's the other co-founder, Guillaume de Fondumer. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. And
Guillaume Frenchman.
Yeah, since he claims that the accusations were absolutely false and they are taking all legal actions to defend their honor. Fuck him too. But yeah, like the organizations, the magazines in general are indicating that two people from both Le Monde and Mediapart got together, like two people each side, got together and researched it for months, like since September of last year. And since the articles themselves came out like a couple of weeks ago, damn, that is a lot of time that's been spent. They corroborated data, they got everything together that they possibly could as far as this goes. They put a hell of a lot of work into researching this. So, like, they're saying that it's as close to accurate as it conceivably can be. But both groups indicated yes, they are being sued, but we don't know for what. Like, we don't know in what way. They're basically just saying that they are being sued, and Cage et al. Said they're going to sue them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange.
We're gonna sue you. Why are you gonna sue us? For our honor. About what? I don't know.
Yeah, like we don't even know what the suit is for at this point. Like what they're being sued for. The only thing I can think of is some type of libel, which, I mean, generally speaking, there is a fundamental difference between alleging that events are happening in a place of work and saying that like somebody is a certain thing. Like if you allege that somebody is a piece of shit, like, you know, a sexist or a racist or a rapist or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then that's generally considered, at least in the US, to be protected speech. It's only if you say this person is this thing.
Mhm.
It would be like the difference between if I said that David Cage was a rapist, that would be libel. That would be illegal. If I said that allegedly David Cage is a rapist based on information, you know, that's protected speech.
Right.
And because you're only alleging it at that point, you're not saying that he actually is one. You're just saying that the possibility exists that he is one based on specific data that needs to be corroborated as such.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's the difference between you know, saying like Bill Cosby was an alleged rapist and Bill Cosby is a rapist. You know what I'm saying? So so the point is, the core problem is I don't know how this works with French law because, like, you know, none of us are French. So that's.
But I have
gonna
French
be-
friends. I could ask them.
I mean, that's probably what it's going to come down to. Is we're probably going to have to figure out like what speech laws are in France for one thing.
I mean,
But beyond that, it's just so much bullshit. Like, you're suing somebody because they said a thing you didn't like. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
the thing that I'm reading the most of right now, as far as just some of the recent articles, there's a Kotaku article talking about how the guy who actually wrote the article, Jason Schreier, was talking about how he was actually in France a couple of weeks ago, and how he met up with Le Monde and was talking to him about Fondumer's like pushing of the of the lawsuit, pretty much stating that Quantic Dream is denying the accusations. And a month after, the studio put out another statement calling it a smear campaign and promising that legal action was underway. I don't know. Like, I guess they're saying that they're suing them for defamation of character, which is super basic, but it's a video game company that's pushing back against journalists vehemently that we're not these bad guys. We don't do these things. Talking about how, Le Monde was talking about how there were, pictures of male strippers with, phallic symbols stuck on their head. And that was funny, and this is the stuff that's all around the office all the time. And, Cage and the other guys, all of these, they're just like, No. That's not what's going on. That's not what's going on. There's none of this. Those pictures have been around for a long time, and it wasn't us that made them, and we're not posting them. They're just being found by people, and it's like, I'm pretty sure if that was really the case, there would probably be some pretty uncomfortable people dealing with something like this.
Okay. In regards to the freedom of speech for French law, they do have limitations on their freedom of speech. They do have stuff that is not surprising, like stuff against child pornography is considered illegal,
Sure.
not protected by freedom of speech. Other things not protected. They do this thing where a law was adopted in 2000 reinforcing the presumption of innocence of defendants accused of having committed a crime. One of the aims of this law was to prohibit the media from presenting the subject or accused in a manner that would imply that she was guilty. Like, for instance, a picture, like right here, what I'm reading from this blog, it says, for example, by publishing a picture of the subject in handcuffs or something like that. So, but in hindsight, what you said, Mark, is that pretty much this is like for the last 9 months, these people pretty much did an investigation and they published their work, and that's what they're being attacked on. So that from what it seems like, what I'm reading here is they are well within their freedom of speech under French law for what they have said, but there is nothing here I see that's also against what the guys at Quantic Dreams can be held accountable for at the moment. I might have to read more on this later.
Well, right, no, but keep in mind that the reason why this even happened in the first place is because a former employee went to the journalists and said, "Hey, this is the stuff that's going on inside of Quantic. This is the reason why I left. This is the reason why Quantic Dream has lost 50 employees over the last year because of this, and this."
Mm-hmm.
And then Quantic Dream came back out saying, "No."
Well, there's also that loophole in there. I
None
don't
of that's
think
an actual thing that's going on. You guys are just trying to smear us.
Yeah, no, but there is that thing. Is like, did they mention that the former employees that were, involved in this, did they have any reports of them, like, let's say, going to the police and reporting all this stuff, or is it just that they went straight to the journalists and told them, hey, this is what's going on? Because if that's the case, then you have these guys at Quantum Dreams, even though they're assholes, they have a right to be as to puff out their chests about these accusations.
The original article...
Sure, they can puff out their chest about it, but we're talking about going to court against it. Like, EA hasn't gone to court to sue anybody because they were accused of having, like, all of these crunch problems,
Mm-hmm.
So the original Kotaku article that I found about this basically says that there are reports in 3 separate French outlets depict a pattern of inappropriate behavior, sexist and homophobic jokes, and an overall toxic environment at Quantic Dream, something the video game studio executives strongly deny. According to Le Monde's report by way of Eurogamer, 5 former employees filed a complaint in spring of 2017 against the company as one of its employees for circulating degraded images. In February of 2017, a trove of 600 photoshops of various employees that were homophobic or sexist in nature, and some which even included Nazi symbolism, was discovered by an IT manager who had been the subject of one of them. These files dated back to 2013, with even some displayed in the open spaces of the office, although studio heads David Cage and Guillaume de Fontenay claimed they weren't aware of the offensive ones.
They dug themselves a pretty deep hole.
I mean, that's dumb. First of all, like, we're not even gonna get into GG because, like, why would we bother? Like, that's whatever. Like, GG notwithstanding, this is still just a baseline of what's technically just expected in gaming, in gaming companies these days, especially ones who are predominantly run by older men who really just don't care and think that they're above whatever it is that is really going on in these office spaces and what's really going on in their world. And they're just like, you know what? A little controversy sells video games. We'll push it and see what goes. But defamation of character lawsuits? Sure, that'll sell hundreds of thousands more copies. That's really what this is all about. It isn't so much just, they're afraid the game is bad. They're afraid that, whatever, random idea of them having some sort of, like he says, honor or whatever it is that he's trying to protect is just stupid, because this is the norm. This is the stuff that goes on behind the scenes at a lot of different places. If one or two people get found out that there's something specific, and then there's a bunch of people and there's nothing in the company to protect those people from this sort of behavior, like, if this had been any other place, like any of the bigger, like, let's say this went into like one of the big three, or this went into something like this shit wouldn't fly at Nintendo. This shit wouldn't fly at Sony. Why are we letting these other side kind of developers, these third parties like Quantic Dream, get away with the same shit? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You see the same thing over and over again. And it really all harkens back to old guys have power, don't really care about anybody else. They're in it for themselves, and that's really what it feels like. It may not be, but that's what it feels like. And you get down to it, and it's like, I have no desire to play this game. I have no desire to buy anything from these people if this is how they're treating their employees. I mean, if this is how they're going to treat the employees, like, why should they care if I don't give them money?
That is,
and I mean, like, it's just really stupid, because like Cage's response is basically, do we want to talk about homophobia? We worked with Ellen Page, who's fighting for LGBT rights. Do we want to talk about racism? We're working with Jesse Williams, who is fighting for civil rights in the United States. Yeah, did you really just respond with, I don't hate gay people, my best friend is gay? Really, David Cage? Really? Did you just my friend yourself out of this argument?
That is not a get out of jail free card. It's
Listen,
not.
I've been using this particular euphemism for the past couple of days to express my displeasure with stuff in my work life. But David Cage, I have a suggestion for you. I want you to go to Home Depot, or whatever the French equivalent of Home Depot is. I don't know. Le Chateau Depot, I guess. And I want you to go to the plumbing aisle.
Depot.
And I want you to buy a U-pipe, like a U-bolt pipe. And I want you to take that home with you. And I want you to go into the bathroom and take off your pants and your underpants and take that U-pipe. And I want you to take one end of that pipe and affix it to your penis, and the other end, and put it between your butt cheeks and piss into your own asshole. Fucking piece of shit.
Like I said, all it really does is make me not want to buy their games. If this is really what's going on, and they're going to play the I'm better than you, so I'm going to be smarter than you card by going, my best friend is gay, or I deal with civil rights movement people. Blacks are great. It's like, jeez, come on,
like, I haven't wanted to
guys.
play a Quantic Dream game in years at this point. I'm not even going to pretend that like this is in any way tarnishing my opinion of David Cage. Fahrenheit, like Indigo Prophecy, Fahrenheit, whatever you want to call it, was an okay game that was marred by an absolutely objectively atrocious ending. David Cage's writing is so bad that it is objectively bad. I don't know how you could fucking possibly manage to write something that is so bad that in a subjective medium everybody agrees it's terrible. But no, you did it.
So bad.
Yes. The ending was aliens did it. The best part of that game, though, is for an article I never wrote, I bought Fahrenheit because that was the AO version of the game. There is a sex mini game in the beginning, which is basically just like press down repeatedly to hump, and it's so if you played Heavy Rain and you thought that sex mini game was bad, it was so much worse in Fahrenheit.
That reminds me of this.
Heavy Rain just hurts my fucking brain.
That reminds me of a picture I saw a couple of days
Okay,
ago. It was a picture
we're gonna have to segue here
Kratos.
for a second. I mean, so in hindsight, David Cage is an asshole.
Oh, he's absolutely an asshole, and I will not I've hated David Cage before hating David Cage was cool.
Okay, so
You're a David Cage hipster.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I hated him before it was cool.
I hated him before I hated him. Who knew?
Yeah. But so moving on from one asshole, we're gonna move on to, well, I don't know who this guy is. Nintendo has a new president that's about to take the reins from Tatsumi Kimishima, who is stepping down. Kimishima has been in charge of Nintendo for about the past 3 years after the passing of Iwata. And, well, he pretty much has overseen the entire Switch project, and it's been pretty successful. So Kimishima was just only a temporary president for the company, which, I mean, I didn't know, but apparently he seemed to know what he was doing in terms of listening to the fan base and whatnot. He seemed to look like he was giving Nintendo pretty good direction, but he is actually stepping down. He's probably close to retiring. His replacement, however, is Shantaro Furukawa, who actually has been with Nintendo since 1994. He was an outside director for the Pokemon Company since 2012. He's had multiple roles within the company, from managing executive, a supervisor, corporate analysis, and administrative division and director of Nintendo. He's also spent 10 years in Europe, and he's very fluent in English, so this is going to be interesting. Not exactly sure what he's going to bring to the table, but he is, according to what everyone says, is around 48 years old, making him one of the youngest presidents of the company. And I guess they want a young president so that he has more of a connection with the fan base for Nintendo. Is the only thing I can see. And Jan is groaning. Please, Jan, share your thoughts.
So, I get it. Kimishima and Furukawa have been hands-on in some capacity with the Pokemon Company since at least 2000. And the fact is, they're bringing it, it feels like to me that they're bringing in Furukawa at a really interesting time. Because, like you said, Kimishima was temporary. Like, he knew he was temporary. He just needed the interim time frame to figure out who they were going to bring up to be the new president. Announcing Furukawa, who has been in charge of Nintendo's global marketing department since 2016 and has done all of these other things within Nintendo as a generality, whereas Kimishima started in, as the Pokemon Company's CFO in 2000 and became president of Nintendo of America in 2002. There's this weird sort of backwards sort of dichotomy between these two guys, where you've got Kimishima, who was older but very Japanese, and then you've got Furukawa, who is the epitome of the Tokyo Japanese executive. He speaks English, he's young, he understands what the kids want, he understands what the players want, he's got a bigger hand in the pie than most of the other people, and it's oh, is that why you're still keeping Bayonetta on the Switch? Okay, that seems about right. It seems like it's a power play. I think that Nintendo understands that they're getting their asses handed to them by Sony. Even though the Switch is probably their hottest selling console in 3 generations.
To be fair, the Switch was an extremely hot... I mean, not the Switch. The Wii was an extremely high-selling console. It just had no attachment rate.
Exactly.
You bought it, then you put it away.
That's a debate I get into a lot with people who are in the industry. I got into this with Phil Collar formerly of Polygon, not too long ago. The argument basically goes that most people on the pro Wii side have made the argument that the Wii was an extremely high-selling console, which it absolutely was, and Nintendo sold them at a profit, so therefore the Wii was a success. And my counter-argument is the attach rate was dog dick, and the only games that Nintendo ever sold was Nintendo games. It was a success from the perspective that it made them enough money to keep the company in business and to keep the lights on, but it was a failure because they got a major atrophy of their third-party support on the Wii. They weren't able to convince anybody of worth to support the Wii U, to the point where the sales numbers were so embarrassing they stopped reporting on them and just killed the system quietly. And the Switch has spent the past year plus desperately working for Nintendo as a make good to rebuild trust with all of their third parties. So, it's the Wii was a success in that it made money. But yeah, like as a successful business strategy, I would say it's the most successful console they've had since the fucking SNES.
And let's be honest, with the Wii scaring away all their third-party partnerships that they had, I mean, the GameCube was probably the last good system they had that had great third-party support, and they dicked it all away with the Wii because, hey, look, cheap hardware.
Motion controls!
Yeah, motion controls. Cheap hardware. We could make a profit. And everyone's just like, but
Fuck
we
1080p.
But
Who
we-
needs that shit?
and then you got companies like,
monitors?
we can't port our
Well,
shit to your system, though.
Like, I mean, this is a conversation for an entirely different time, but I do want to note, I understand your objections, but I don't agree with them. I don't think the problem was there. I think it was entirely a Nintendo problem. That is like outside of the scope of this conversation. Like that might be a conversation we can have another time. But I do want to note, though, I think we all definitively here agree that the Wii was dog shit.
It had some good games, but there was more shit than
But every fucking
good.
console had some good games, The
But for the
3DO
Switch-
had like that one. The 3DO had that one fucking JRPG that was pretty neat, and the best version of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo that was available on consoles for years.
But
Still
you
a
have to
fucking
look at the
3DO.
Wii system at a whole, and you could definitely tell that there was probably 4 times as many bad games and shovelware than there was actual gems that were on the system.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As Mark
Probably
would
more
say, it
than
was fine.
hell. You look at the ratio of good to bad games on the 3DO, and I'm sure there's more good games than bad on a ratio compared to the Wii. And I have a 3DO.
I own a lot of good Wii games, but I own a lot of bad Wii games because of all the shovelware shit that was sent to us for review. So
Yeah.
I would have to really sit down and do the numbers, because there were a lot of fucking bad 3DO games, let me tell you. And I can't think of a lot of good 3DO games. I will say, as Jan said, yes, it was fine. It was fine. It was fine.
It was fine.
The Wii U was shit. The Wii U was terrible. It was trash. There were a couple of good games that came out for that, like maybe 20, but no, the Wii U was objectively garbage. The Wii was fine. The Switch is good. The Switch is very good, I would argue.
So with Furukawa being the new president, what do you think? He will make his appearance on the next Nintendo Direct, and do you think he will speak English to talk to his demographic?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say he's going to shock everybody, and I think he'll say stuff, but he's not going to do it alone. It's going to be him and Reggie. There's no way that
Reggie
he's not
Fils-Aimé?
going to bring Reggie. Well, yeah, why wouldn't he have Reggie on there too? It would just make more sense for them to have that dynamic. And I think that's a thing.
When
that
is the
he
next
needs to
Direct
do.
scheduled for?
I think
We don't
at
know.
E3. I think they usually do.
Oh
It'll
yeah,
be
then
before.
if that's the case, then
It'll
yeah,
be
they got
before.
plenty of
They'll
time.
have something. They will have something before E3, and the only reason I'm saying that is because there's too much speculation and too much buzz about past future. So it's like we might see just a short past future announcement prior to E3, and then a bigger reveal at E3. But like I said, as far as what Nintendo's going to do, and a lot of the reason why they did what they did, there's a good chance they may actually be on the floor this year. So much so that they may actually do a conference instead of just a direct.
So you think
And I
they might
think-
revert back to what they did years ago?
Well, keep in mind that the reason why they were doing what they were doing was because they had Iwata. When Iwata passed away,
They lost that magic.
well, no, not necessarily. Kimishima has always been in the background. He's always been in the background. Even though Iwata was still in the foreground, Kimishima has always been in the back. He's never been a front-facing guy because Iwata was the face of the company. If you thought Nintendo, you thought of Satoru Iwata. You didn't think about anybody else. You didn't think about Kimishima. Even though Kimishima was there and he was doing a lot for the company, he's a businessman. Look at his picture. He looks like that squinty-eyed dude that you see in an anime with no glasses on, trying to like squint, and his eyes look like threes on his face. It's ridiculous.
He didn't look.
This guy is not somebody you're going to see on live television or on Twitch. It's not going to happen. But Furukawa, I believe, thinks that the only way people get the message, aside from just the Nintendo Directs, Nintendo Directs are great. And I don't say stop those. I say keep those coming. That's great for regular updates. But when you go to a big conference, like if you go to TGS and all you have is a pre-recorded thing, get out of here. If you go to E3 again and all you have is a pre-recorded thing, nobody cares. It's great, and you get a bunch of people on Twitch, YouTube that are watching the event and watching the Direct, and they're reacting to what the Direct is. But the Direct is scripted, and there's no way to really gauge how well the audience and your player base are really getting to know what you're actually revealing for this year. I mean, let's be honest, those last couple of years, what did we get? Switch announcement, which revealed Mario and Legend of Zelda, and that was it. And everyone's like, okay, these are good. These is good games. This is fine. But where's the rest of it? And we're like, oh, yeah, Zelda Dynasty Warriors again. Really, nobody cares. Because it was so lackluster, it was so just step back. It was a video. You didn't get to see or hear the interaction of the audience. So to have that coming back, I really think that Furukawa is going to do something in E3 this year that's actually going to be a press conference. It's going to be just like it's going to be Microsoft and Nintendo and Sony all over again. And it's really going to be about the games. It's not going to be about. We're not going to see another system generation for at least another 2 or 3 years, at least.
Ugh, that's
I
too
don't-
soon for me, in my personal opinion.
But how long has the PS4 been out? Think about
what,
that
3 years
logically.
now? 3 or 4 years?
Gen
don't-
1 PS4s. But the thing is that we're not going to see another console generation for at least another 2 years. At least. It's only going to be about the games, and it's only going to be about who's got the best third party going forward. Nintendo is Nintendo, and they will always produce their primaries. They will always produce a Mario. They will always produce a Zelda. They will always produce a Metroid, and they will always produce a Smash, no matter what. These are the 4 kinds of IPs that you're always going to see on the Switch going forward. It's just how it is. And with the pending, looming, everybody's waiting for it, damning news conference where Nintendo is going to come out and say, we're killing the DS because we all know it's coming, there's still going to be this weird, I have 2 Nintendo consoles thing. I've got my DS and I've got my Switch. Technically, they're both portable, but we already know, just from the way things are going, that the DS numbers are down and the Switch numbers are up, and it's starting to get to a point where they're like, it's the same kind of, they're cards. They're little cards. They're little SD cards going into a system. DS does it, Switch does it. You don't have a lot of moving parts, and for that to be the way that it is, it just makes sense that the Switch replaces the DS in some point in capacity. That's why I'm thinking Nintendo is stuck. If Sony were to come out at E3 and go, ha, we totally had you fooled, here's the PS5. And Nintendo's going to go,
Now,
just
I would
moved
say
my
we have to
pants a
save this
little.
E3 talk for another time. I think we have to, unfortunately,
but the
move
baseline
forward before we get too off guard, or too
But-
off course. But go ahead.
the baseline I'm getting at is that Furukawa, Reggie, live, doing a press conference, being younger, I mean, younger is relative. He's almost 50, but
Younger,
being
I
fresher.
guess.
Well, being fresher, being somebody who's willing to be in front of people, being willing to do what Iwata was doing, or even go out on a limb and do something like Steve Jobs-esque. Let's just be honest. I think that if Furukawa is going to be smart about what he needs to do going forward, he needs to really think about what it is that the fans want and not so much about first party, because that's always been Nintendo's stumbling block.
All right. So, well, we did have one more item of news that we wanted to talk over, but I'm going to have to call an audible and pass on that. So, we're going to have to move on to our main topic of discussion here, and art or offensive. Video games is just like any other medium. It's all down to perception of what you make of it. Like looking at a painting, reading a book, listening to music. People have particular tastes and can determine whether or not they like something, or whether they find it appropriate, inappropriate, whether they think it's art, whether it's beautiful, whether it's something that's mandatory that needs to be experienced, like a Van Gogh, or listening to, let's say, like the Zoso album from Led Zeppelin, or hell, even anything on TV, or reading a book like The Great Gatsby or something like that. Stuff that you should experience that is like that is art. But then you have mediums where it's literally to the point where it's just offensive. Like for every Great Gatsby, you have a freaking a porno magazine. You have for a Led Zeppelin album, you'll have, let's say, take any of the crap rap albums that you have coming out in this day and age, that literally draws more, that's extremely crude. Take pretty much
For every Michelangelo's David, there's Piss Christ.
exactly. So, and there's always
I mean-
Piss Christ. Actually, I thought the guy threw poop on a picture of Christ, to be truthfully honest.
No, there's the guy who peed in a jar and put a crucifix in it.
Okay, because
Literally Piss Christ.
I do remember it was either the late 90s or early 2000s. Some guy had a statue of Jesus Christ and he smeared poop all over it. Or it was a picture of Christ. And that he called it art, and he tried to have it displayed at the museum in New York City.
That might be a different guy. That one I don't
Probably
recall.
a different guy.
Probably
I
a different guy.
recall Piss Christ specifically because that was a big goddamn deal.
I mean, if we're gonna put that in terms of video games, though, that would be like saying for every Street Fighter, there's a fight of gods. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, but now, question is where do you draw the line? Because just like video games, and just like, let's say, for music, you had people like Run DMC and songs like "Fuck the Police," and they're always and they were in the fight against Congress, declaring their music being art and that it should be perfectly okay to listen to with parental advisory, of course. But then, and you look at a video game, and let's say you have, your good wholesome games like, let's say, Mario Kart and Rayman Legends, but then you have, on the other spectrum, you have games like Rayplay and the Columbine high school shooting games and the Sandy Hook killing games and crap like that. Which, yeah, I'm sorry to make you groan, but it's I would have to say it's necessary.
This is kind of like a cringe episode.
It is a cringe episode.
It's the way it goes.
Because you have
It
people
happens.
who literally, to the ends of the earth, defend the existence of some of these games. I mean, it's almost as like, let's say, okay, it's not as bad as, it's like, okay, we have Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball Series, but it's not as bad as, let's say, Rayplay or the numerous hentai games that are in existence.
Right. So, I mean, if we're really gonna go down that road, not all of them are that bad. Yes, Rayplay was a terrible fucking debacle, and even in Japan, that game was like,
Or let's take out
Oh.
Rayplay, let's put in Leisure Suit Larry box office bust, just to
Look.
make Mark happy.
look, Leisure Suit Larry is a goddamn miracle of science. All right, you leave Larry out of this.
Well,
Those are
technically,
terrible games, but it's still sold.
Hey, you shut your whore mouth. Okay? The other Leisure Suit Larry games are generally
They're good. They're not
average
terrible.
to good. Are average to good. Magna Cum Laude is Box Office Bust is the worst, and everything about it is the worst.
I would
That game
agree
is
with that.
shit.
I would agree
That
with that.
game is so fucking bad that Matt Yeager, for my birthday, broke a copy of it and mailed it to Al Lowe, and Al Lowe signed it with "Play a better game," and then it was sent to me. That's how fucking bad that game is. Okay.
But on the line, so
Oh.
how do you draw the line? I mean, just looking at art as a medium in general, or video games as a medium in general, how do you distinguish something that's art? Like, of course, you know, we do have our games that are definitely straight up like art, like the recent games, like let's say Flower, Child of Eden, Rez, Vibe Ribbon, and to some extent, Journey, and a bunch of other games like that. You know, hell, you can even say that the trilogy from the Team Ico group, their games are pretty much just like, I forget the name of the studio. I'm sorry, but like their games are considered like beautiful pieces of art as well.
Mm.
But then, so where do you draw the line? Why do you draw the line at that? And how do you perceive something to be art and offensive? When sometimes offensive could technically still be art. As weird as that sounds.
Like, what do you mean here?
Like, where do you draw the... Okay, how do you determine that something is offensive? Because everything is always by perception. Like, we can agree...
Well, listen. Everything is art.
Right.
Okay.
Like, here's the thing. A lot of people want to attempt to make the argument that something like is not art in some capacity or another. Like the term pornography is meant to contain the phrase "no artistic merit generates sexual thoughts." But listen, there is a lot of truly artistic pornography in the world. To my mind, you kind of start from a perspective of everything is art and then like step backward from there. I would make the argument of the most liberal take, personally. Everything is art. Some things are just bad. And even if I find a game to be truly offensive, to be truly awful, like, you know, like Hatred, for example, or Leisure Suit Larry Box Office Bust, or Rapeplay, or whatever, I don't like it. I would think that like we as a society collectively would probably be better off if it didn't exist. But I'm not going to say that it should be banned, and I'm not going to say that it's not art. It's just very dumb and bad and kind of embarrassing to our medium as a whole. But it's like we can't necessarily say, you know, this thing isn't art just because we don't like it or just because we're offended by it. And I mean, some people will try to make that argument. You know, originally, before he eventually softened on the position and then ultimately passed away, Roger Ebert made the argument video games aren't art. Video games cannot be art. And for me, it's like, I don't like that idea of restricting stuff out of art, because you eventually get to the point where it's something isn't art because I say so, and it like, you know, I don't like the idea of restricting something out of the environment just because somebody decided it wasn't good enough. You know, these bad games should still be art, and somebody out there probably likes them, but I think we can all collectively agree that they're art, they're an artistic labor, somebody put a lot of work into them to varying extents. They're just shit. And they're offensive, which I think is more where this comes from. Like, when is art offensive? When does it so offensive that it's like, this is a bad decision, we should not have done this? Like, I don't want to kick any of them out of the temple, you know?
But can it be so far like Is it possible for something that begins as art to suddenly take shape and no longer be art? Like it can just be a giant mess?
I mean, even giant messes are art in their own way. Look at what the fuck is his name? I can't think of his name, but the guy who did Antichrist. His movies in general are always a fucking mess in some capacity or another. Lars von Trier. Lars von Trier films are always a fucking mess.
Isn't that the guy that did a whole lot of exploitation films in the 70s?
No,
No?
I don't think so.
What's
I'm
it with
pretty
you with exploitation films recently, huh?
What do you mean exploitation films? Probably the first time I've mentioned them.
Nah, we were talking about that the other day.
The first movie that he made was The Element of Crime in 1984. Antichrist is one of the more notable films that he made because it's the one that Willem Dafoe was in with the fucking fox where he's like, chaos reigns. That movie is so fucking weird. Like fucking this fox like ate his own intestines out and then like says that and dies. Willem Dafoe has sex with his wife while their son like walks out of a window and dies in the snow. Willem Dafoe's wife like hammered a nail through his penis or something. It's a strange fucking movie. But is it art? Yes. It is objectively art. It's just weird. So it's.
But can you consider something like God, what is the name of that damn movie? I just had it in my head. Again, yeah, going back to the exploitation films, there was there's a bunch of them that were very controversial in the 70s that came out.
Dude, there's a shitload of stuff that's controversial now.
Controversial
that
now,
out.
but like back then they were.
No, we're talking like fucking Salo, 120 Days of Sodom, or a Serbian film.
I'm thinking of Cannibal Holocaust. I'm thinking of the film Cannibal Holocaust.
I have issues with Cannibal Holocaust because they legitimately murdered and ate animals.
Yeah,
in that.
That's what I'm asking.
That's illegal. I think you can still consider that artwork, but at that point, like, you're breaking the law. If you're actively exploiting a person or an animal or something like that, if you are like, if you like that's it's not the same thing, but like, if you exploited a person into doing something they didn't want to do. And like, I really don't want to bring up the topics, but you can immediately think of situations where that would be an extremely illegal thing. I feel like, no, that's probably not art. That's exploitation. That's illegal. So if we're talking Cannibal Holocaust, where like they murdered actual animals for that, nah, I don't hate that movie, but I don't necessarily think it's art because we're getting into the point of that legal problem. All
right. Now, what about in terms of just legality? Not nobody getting killed, but like, let's say hentai games with pedophilia.
You want to know if
like that. Like, where do you draw the line with that?
So, see, here's the thing. In Japan, it's totally different than it is in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different point of view when it comes to that sort of ideal.
That I understand.
In a hentai game, 9 times out of 10, it's considered loli or lolita because of the fact that the girls in all of the games, as posted by law, state that every single girl in those games is at least 18. Now, we may not think that's very true, or somebody else in another country may not think that's true. But in Japan, legally, every single one of those games, even if the girl looks like she is 12, is 18, because that is a cultural norm of society over there. It is not the same as it is in the United States. There is a different level of perversion, and I use that term very loosely, when it comes to how a lot of those games, especially when a hentai game is involved in from Japan, a lot of these games are built in a way where there is going to be some form of baseline. However, if the game were to be released and, say, translated, and the translation changes their age from 18 to, say, 12, that's different because that was not the original intent of the game. That is something that was brought on purely by the translation team or the American producer or the overseas producer of the game to change the context of that game. Generally, why you don't see a lot of hentai games from Japan coming over to the States, because of the fact that when they translate them, there is a level of personal ideology that goes into translating those games. And in doing so, you have this whole idea of, oh, well, she looks 12, so she must be 12. When in reality, in Japan, every single character in that game is 18. Legally, they have to be, because that's the age of pornography in Japan. While it may not be the age of consent, it is the age of pornography, which is a totally different business there. And in that kind of context, it really becomes a very, very big gray area when it comes out of that country. And that could be said for anything that comes out of the States and goes overseas anywhere else. If you've got an American studio that's releasing a game and we see an international release and all of a sudden there's changes, like take World of Warcraft, for instance. In China, they have laws against showing of bone and decay. They don't let you do it. So the undead, forsaken, and bone mounts and anything that would normally just basically considered desecration of remains is changed and is covered with some form of flesh. So that to them is considered offensive. You know, bones and desecration of death. They don't like it there. They don't show it there. So they make those studios change those games when they actually go to those countries. So a lot of that in that context, especially when you're dealing with that's an aside, but the baseline is when you're dealing with the ideals of pedophilia, there are only two markets for that. One of them is converted hentai games, and the other one is actual real life little girl pedophilia, little boy pedophilia, at which point you are dealing with a worldwide legality issue. And that is really not something that I personally think is really all of that controversial, because if it's a Japanese video game from a Japanese company and it's purely animated, if it's just 2D pixelated on your screen, 9 times out of 10, if something's been changed in that game, it's not the age factor that's going to end up being the problem. Again, I don't mean to keep going back to rape play, but that's probably the most primary example of what actually is considered to be relatively offensive. That's when you really break a line, because now you're talking about, dude, what goes on to place, finds mother and 2 children, one of which is actually noted as being underage, even by the Japanese creators of the game. That's where a line is drawn. That's where you really start seeing the problems of, oh, okay, this is actually kind of, who would actually really want to play this game unless they're that kind of a crazy person who likes pedophilia? If that's the case, then, oh boy, I got a chair over here. We need to have a sit down and talk here. Ryan Williams comes out and he starts slowly peering from underneath the back side of the couch, be like, hi there, how are you today? Oh, good, I'm on that show.
I think you're thinking of Chris Hansen.
Thank you, Chris Hansen.
Chris Hansen.
Chris Hansen shows up and sits down next to you and says, so tell me why it is that you showed up today, you know?
And I do want to interject here. If we have a problem, like if you look at a game or an anime where girls who are quite literally, because there's 2 instances where you're coming into.
Mm-hmm.
Either one, you're talking about an anime or a game where sexuality is an actual thing, like a pornographic video game of some type or another, in which case they are of age, but they are visually represented to not be. Like, that's clearly what they're going for. Or 2, there is no sex, but the characters are quite literally underage and are put into non-explicit sexual situations. Off the top of my head, the way they dress Tiki in Fire Emblem games, or just like in general, where you have like a 15-year-old girl who's like basically almost naked, shit like that.
Or that one girl from Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Right. It's basically a case of those skirt the edge of legality. From a legality perspective, that's not really a conversation to be had. Do I think that's art? Do I think that should be considered art? In a broad sense, I'm going to say yes, but with the but being, if that personally offends you, if you are offended by something, you can say, I don't personally consider this to be art because I feel that it is grotesquely offensive in a way that is like beyond me. But I acknowledge that there is artistic merit even if I find it offensive. I don't think that the correct answer is to say, I don't like this, so it's offensive. So therefore it's not art. Because while I do agree that is definitely skirting a line of legality, like doing stuff that would be illegal if they were being explicit about it, but because they're skirting that edge, it's not illegal. I do think that that's exploitative, and I do think that that's them being like sneaky about it. By the same token, I do think that, you know, there's artistic merit in the product, even if what they're actually creating is gross and weird. And I want to be super clear here. If you do have a problem with that, I don't fucking blame you, frankly. That's a point where you need to be mad at Japan for allowing it to happen, and not always the people who are creating it. Like, we have that conversation, you know, about Atlas with the Persona and the Catherine games, where in Catherine they had the Erica character was constantly a running gag as a transgender character, and how the Rika character who's coming up may or may not be a transgender joke. And in Persona 4 and 5, they had, you know, like gay panic jokes and in Persona 3, actually. In all the last 3 Personas, they had gay panic jokes. You know, like, you can be mad-ish at Atlas for doing that, and you should be, but you really have to be more mad culturally at Japan for being like, nah, this is cool. We're okay with this. Fuck it. So for me, it's like, I don't want to say that those things aren't art, but I do want to say that if you are mad at them, you need to be mad about Japan culturally.
Now, outside
well.
of Japan, though, would you, I guess you feel the same way in regards to something like Sandy Hook shootings or the Columbine massacre video games and stuff like that?
I am not going to put games that were made by independent developers with 2 or 3-man teams into a position where they're ever going to be considered art, ever. Unless it's a company that's actually legitimate. I'm not going to give some random-ass Newgrounds Flash artists the time of day, especially when it comes to the creations of school shootings. Now,
Right, like the thing is, you know, Undertale is a game made by like a person. Basically. So that, like, you do have to qualify it to that extent. It can't just be like, you have to put a lot of, like, you really have to drill down for that. Right. And like, that kind of sucks, but by the same token, we also have to acknowledge, yeah, unfortunately, hatred gets to be a thing that we have to talk about because of how it was done. But yeah, no, like the Columbine simulator, no, fuck that guy.
Yeah, no. Danny Ladon, get the fuck out of here.
So then that's right there, like,
but
creating a game with the intent of upsetting people is the line right there, right?
No. It's, see, again, like I said, a lot of this really comes out to be really gray. Like, there isn't going to be a defined line except in these cases. Like, if you're going to be somebody like Danny Ladon and you're going to make Super Columbine Massacre RPG, yeah, fuck you. Okay, straight up fuck you. You have no right to actually be a fucking game developer. Go back to fucking school and learn how to be a goddamn fucking nurse or something else, because this is not going to be for you. You did this for the fucking laughs. Get the fuck out of here. Nobody cares about you. But if you're
If we
going to be
wanna-
somebody who like Toby Fox, you're going to put something like Undertale together that speaks to a message that has some sort of an underlying understanding of point A, point B, genocide versus pacifist route, and having a completely different retelling of each line story, even when the game remembers what you did based on the previous gameplay. There is still going to be, a bit more of a that's really where your line is at. It's more of a matter of, was the game actually speaking to something that made sense artistically versus being an asshole Flash programmer who decided this would be really funny and get him a bunch of money because, haha, people want to do this anyway.
I do also want to clarify here that there is a point where we kind of have to acknowledge that the major problem here is that you're talking about real people and exploiting real people. Now, you can make art based around real people and real events. We've seen that many times. Cinderella Man. The various Call of Duties and Battlefield games that exist around World War II. I can't remember the name of it right now. Valiant Hearts, I want to say.
How about the recent That Cancer Dragon?
That Dragon Cancer, yes.
Yes, that Dragon.
These are sorts of things where the tone is respectful towards victims. I do want to note that I do think if you are exploiting somebody's tragedy for your own profit and you are glorifying criminality against real people, you're gonna have a problem. Like, I don't want to say that there isn't an artistic way that you could present the Columbine shooting or the Sandy Hook massacre in a video game, but I do want to say that we can look at what has been created here, and we don't have to give these people our attention or our time because they have not created art. They have created exploitation. Like, we don't have to consider what they've made because all they have done is exploited another person's tragedy for their own value. Like, this is no different than Alex Jones saying that Sandy Hook was a false flag operation. There's no artistic merit to it. It's just somebody putting on a show that is objectively exploiting other people's tragedy for money, is objectively false and objectively wrong, and is terrible. We don't have to give it any consideration. We can just point at this person and say, you have not made anything good here. You have not made anything artistic. You are just a piece of shit. And we can move on with our day.
Exactly.
So no, I don't think those are art, because I think the people who made these things are specifically trying to hurt others. It's no different from that VR game that they made where, like, it simulates being inside of the World Trade Center. No, I don't think that's art. I don't think that's artistic. I think that is you specifically exploiting other people's tragedy to make a dollar and hurting other people in the process. You're not clever. You're not cool. You're just an asshole.
Exactly. Though, if we're really going to get into the meat and potatoes of this, then I would look no further than Rockstar Games.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I love the fact that you both have the exact same reaction.
The core problem
Rockstar.
with Rockstar Games is a combination of detached irony and pushing the envelope as far as it could go. And for the former, we have to look no further than Grand Theft Auto with all of its, nothing really matters kind of presentation of stuff. But for the latter, Manhunt.
Yep.
I mean, Manhunt, honestly, if we're really gonna hit the nail on the head, though, and don't get me wrong, Manhunt and Manhunt 2, especially the Wii version, because motion controls. Honestly, though, like, I would actually go back a little further, and I would say Bully.
I don't hate the
know.
morality. I don't think morality, but Bully has a morality problem.
Yeah.
I really don't. I really do not.
So,
I understand
the thing about it,
where
though,
you're
is that,
coming
like,
from.
but so like you said, you understand where I'm coming from. But the baseline is that I think that because of the fact that it bully itself as a baseline is more rooted in that reality of exploitation that you were talking about versus just the outright just balls to the wall notion that Manhunt and Manhunt 2 are. I mean, I could look at a list of some of the most controversial video games, and I can see Rockstar coming up at least a dozen times.
Sure.
Specifically because that's just what they do. This is their baseline. This is their customer base. 9 times out of 10, the games aren't terrible. I mean, if we're really going to look at is it art, I mean, I guess. Not really, but it could be. Like you said, yes, but, I mean, when you really get down to it, I wouldn't say that Manhunt was art, but in a
Manhunt
baseline,
definitely straddles the line. I do want to defend that. I think that if they made a Manhunt with a female protagonist, that could definitely be some interesting commentary. But Manhunt, as it exists,
yeah, exactly.
is very close to being like it straddles the same line that Saw straddles, where there's definitely like you are getting close to the point where it's hard to defend the artistic merit of this piece because I don't know what the point was.
What about something like Postal or Postal 2 then?
Postal 2, I think, actually
those-
has a message it's trying to get across.
Those are games of like social commentary though, right?
It's Postal.
Right.
Postal, until they did that recent expansion pack with fucking Milo Yiannopoulos in it, I would say that they absolutely had a message they were trying to get across. And listen, if anybody out there is mad, fuck you. Milo Yiannopoulos is a fucking dirt merchant piece of shit, and I don't give a fuck what you think.
Exactly.
I will never give a fuck what you think. If you think Milo Yiannopoulos has any type of artistic merit worth defending, eat my entire ass. But yeah, so outside of that, though, I do think that the original Postal 2, as intended, did have a message it was trying to get across about the idea of the inanity of our lives and just how shit life can be in general, you know? Like, you could accomplish everything in that game in the most boring, mundane way possible, but it was boring and tedious and sucked. And that's what our lives are. And it's kind of sort of a commentary in the same way The Killing Joke is a commentary. All it can take for somebody is one bad day. Now, I don't necessarily think it handles it in the most effective way, but I think there's a certain artistic merit to it. The original Postal, I think, is exploitative of a concept rather than actual people. And so I think there's still artistic merit there, though I do think that, yes, it leans harder into being exploitative. There's just enough art there that I would defend it as an artistic piece of work.
Fair.
Okay.
I mean, that still goes along the same lines of what State of Emergency was, too, because I think that was really kind of like Rockstar's first foray into just all and all out violence for violence sake.
Well, that was a different developer in any case.
No, it was Rockstar.
No, it wasn't. I will bet you $20 if you go look at GameFAQs right now. It's a different developer because that developer broke off from Rockstar and made State of Emergency 2 immediately afterward. And nobody cared about State of Emergency 2 because it wasn't very good.
Right. The developer was Viz Entertainment, but it was still published by Rockstar and Global Software.
No, it was. And then the second game was published by somebody else, I believe.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So, well, the argument is pretty much, I guess, coming to a close. Does anybody have any final thoughts they want to share on art in the gaming industry?
Not everything is going to be missed. Not everything is going to be, a walking simulator. Not everything is going to be all and out violence. But I think in the long run that in certain aspects of certain types of games, you're going to come up with something that is still going to be both controversial and artistic. The two examples that I would give in this case would be Undertale and Stanley Parable. They're both very awkward, and they have a lot of disassociative sort of feelings, but the baseline is that there's still a message there, that there is still a a baseline of conformity that you have to understand before it really kind of gets you to a point where you understand that maybe there is choice and that maybe what your choice is different, but there is still that artistic merit to it, but it still straddles that line where maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and it's still a very difficult, very gray area to step into to say, are games going to be considered full-on art, or is it just a video games for video games' sake?
All right, how about you, Mark?
I want to wrap this up making an observation about a gentleman whose name I bring up every now and again, Mr. Alex Kierkegaard, aka Icy Calm, who the internet has mostly forgotten, and with good reason. But at one point in time was one of the biggest douchebags online. He's somebody who has more or less made himself into a person who feels as though there are objective ways to say if video games are bad or good. So, he's that kind of idiot. But I do want to note that even this guy, who has largely been the sort of person who has argued against the value of artistic merit in video games, that is to say, he doesn't care for artistry in games necessarily, so much that he feels that it should be secondary to mechanical complexity, i.e., ludology should always be more important than narratology. He himself has made the acknowledgement in his own essays that, of course, video games are art. Of course they are. So somebody who is that opposed to the idea of focus on artistry above and beyond anything else still feels that, of course, video games are art. If somebody who that impenetrably hates the concept of artistic video games thinks that that video games in general are just art, I think that should tell you something. And I also do want to note that this spate that we've had in the past couple of years of people saying that video games aren't art, that they're products to be consumed because they've realized that art requires criticism and they don't want their hobbies to be criticized. Same principle as David Cage. Go to Home Depot, buy a U-pipe, piss into your own asshole. Nobody gives a fuck what you think. And you're wrong. Objectively. Go home.
You have a wonderful way with words.
Listen, I just find regressive people to be fucking useless and not worth my time. If you're going to hold society back, go home.
Okay, so I guess we bring our show to a close. I guess it's safe to assume, Jan, you will not be streaming this weekend for your move.
I may or may not. I think I may end up just going out to go and see Infinity War. I actually haven't just see that yet, so I'll play it by ear. I probably will not this week, but I will probably resume next week. Simply just timing and moving. We're not even sure if we have the apartment yet. It's crazy. But other than that, yep, you can still follow my updates on Twitter as normal, Excalibur Might, MYGHT, and I'll still be here every other Monday. So,
okay, and how about you, Mark? Anything on the horizon? Anything you like to just announce?
Not really at the moment. I'm debating on trying to shift my streaming day to a different day, just because I find that less people are available Saturday than used to be, which is what it is. So possibly I'll go back to Sunday, maybe I'll go to Friday. I haven't really figured it out yet, but at the moment, otherwise, I'm just kind of trying to get through a bunch of work stuff before I try to do anything else.
Okay. And as for me, I continue to stream 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Every other Monday, we do this right here, GVN Live. So if you guys are out there, thank you for tuning in. Our next show will be May 14th. You can always catch us here every other Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my other stream shows that I do. Tuesday is Game Jam, where I just play some kind of random game, sometimes online with somebody. A friend of mine. I'm going to try out BattleTech, which I just got the other day. A friend of mine really loves it. Jan approves. It's been a while since I've played a BattleTech game. I believe it's kind of, from what it looks like, it's very reminiscent of Mech Commander, which came out in the early 2000s. But it's more turn-based, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It basically is its Turbrain Scream's nod to the original FASA BattleTech tabletop.
Okay, that's good. And on Wednesday, I have my comedy show, Three Vets and Noob, where me, Lance, Matt, and Rico are currently playing through Borderlands 2, and it's just 2 hours of comedy, camaraderie, fart, and poop jokes. So definitely tune in. All of that goes on at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So definitely check it out. So I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in to GVN Live. I want to thank you, Jan. Thank you, Mark, for once again being a part of the show, as always.
Thanks for having it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there, have a good night.